What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the garage. I'm Brian, and we are back to work on the 280Z today. As you can see, we are almost ready to put this thing back down on the ground, get it off the rotisserie. We got just a little more prep work to do before priming and undercoating the underside of this so that we can put it back on the ground. So that brings us to what we're doing today, removing the last of the undercoating that's on the car. I have gone back and forth on whether I wanted to actually remove all of it, and I think we'll get better results if we do. I know nobody will see underneath this car really, except for us, you know, or somebody that happens to roll underneath it when I got it in the garage. But I don't think I'll be satisfied unless I strip all of this undercoating off and we start from fresh. So what we're doing to make it super easy, and it really is easy, we heat it up with the torch, just like I've done before. We scrape it off with any kind of scraping tool, and it comes right off. It's quite easy. It's just a little bit of a tedious project. And then we'll clean it up with some cleanup disc or something just so that it's ready for primer. And obviously we're gonna end up having to strip all of this just rattle can primer off it before, but that's, you know, that's easy enough. And then after we get done with that, we got another thing we gotta do. The inside of all of these frame rails, you know, this structure up here, the frame rails we built, any of this stuff back here that we have worked on and cannot get access to the inside of, we need to coat that somehow because rust could form from the inside. Obviously when we're welding out here, we're burning off any of the coating that was originally there from the factory on the inside, and I obviously don't want that to just sit there and rot after all the work we've done on it. So that brings us to this. I've got a few cans of this internal frame coating from Eastwood. It comes with a tube with a 360-degree nozzle on the end, so it'll spray in a nice pattern all around. So that'll coat the inside of everything that we can't get to. But first, I want to get all of the undercoating off. Just that way we don't heat up any of that internal frame coating after we have put it on. Now, obviously, last video got a ton of welding on the car done. You guys didn't even see 10% of all the welding I had to do, probably. So many hours in here stitch welding the car. And as far as I can tell, I've got everywhere that I want to get and can get to. At this point, you know, there really isn't anything left, as far as I can tell, that should be welded. So yeah, that's where we're at. I'm just gonna take some time, gonna get all of this undercoating off, gotta get the wheel wells too. I mean, the floors would have been a huge area that needed to be done, and those, obviously, since we replaced the floor pans, do not need to be done. Do need to do inside both of the front wheel wells too. So there's still a lot to do. However, we gotta get it done. This is, as far as I know, the last project that we need to do before we can prime and undercoat this. So that's my plan right now. We're gonna get this cleaned up underneath here. We're gonna coat the inside of the frame rails and everything that we need to. And then we can begin the actual prep and cleanup for undercoating and priming. But let's jump right in and get this all cleaned up. we are done. Whew, we finally finished that. That took quite a while, probably 10-ish hours over yesterday and today, scraping that off. Just a rough estimate, I wasn't really keeping track. But we got everything cleaned off, at least all of the undercoating. All underneath there, everything at the back. It really wasn't too bad. It's obviously a lot of manual labor, but still some music on and get scraping, and it goes pretty quick. Obviously, this is not ready for paint. We gotta clean this up with the cleanup disc. Stick some of these on the die grinder and clean it up. Or I got some over there for the actual 4.5-inch grinder. However, I don't wanna do that just yet because that's gonna bring us down to bare metal. And I definitely don't have enough time to do the whole car, which is gonna be a huge process, and prime it today. There's just no way. I don't have enough time. So we're into the afternoon on Sunday now at this point. And unfortunately, I got work in the morning, so can't be doing that today. However, like I mentioned before, we do need to coat the inside of everything that we cannot get to. And that's where that internal frame coating comes. Now, I wanted to wait and do it after I was done everything, any welding that I'd have to do on that stuff. The stitch welding especially, because there's a lot of welding along the seams, and getting the undercoating off. Now, I don't know as getting the undercoating off, having to heat that up would have affected anything, but I figured since, I might as well wait and just get that done first. So that's where we're at now. Just some things real quick though on the undercoating. So it's pretty easy to just heat that up real quick and it comes off. You don't want to get it too hot because then you could start getting this thin sheet metal warping. I don't think I have any issues with that. Everything seems good. I didn't see any warpage, and there's a point where when you're doing this, you want to get it just hot enough that your scraper just slides right through. And you can definitely tell the difference when you don't have it hot enough and when you do. There's almost no resistance when you've got it hot enough. And then obviously you don't want to keep heating past that because then, again, you could warp the metal. So anyways, that method works very good for getting it off, though. It's much easier than trying to clean this all up with those cleanup discs, because all that does is basically just melt the undercoating. It doesn't, take it off very well. It just creates a ton of smoke in here, gums that disc up, and it just does not work well. But now where we're at this point, this will clean up very quickly. Relatively quickly anyway. We still have a lot of surface area that has to be cleaned up. Like I mentioned before, I debated many times on whether I was going to get that undercoating off or leave it on there and just spray what didn't get coated. The justification was, 1, less work. That means we get stuff done quicker if I left that on there. 2, figured if that stuff's still good after 45 years, it's probably good still for however long I'm going to be running the car. However, I am happy that I got rid of it, and I'll show you a reason why. So, right here, you see that little bit of rust? I had areas throughout the car underneath the undercoating, just like that. The undercoating looked fine, but then you peel it off in places and you had some rust underneath, which, yeah, that wouldn't be an issue for quite a while, that little bit of rust. However, why go through all of this trouble and not have it as good as you can get it? In areas like this, you can see some more surface rust here. All of this stuff here. There's small little rust spots inside the wheel well here, which I assume this is probably going to be the worst of it because you got the wheels slinging rocks and sand and stuff in here. Even with the undercoating, it's eventually going to wear it through. But you can see small bits of surface rust. But eventually, years down the road, that would cause actual rot. So I would much rather get rid of this now and go through all of this trouble and know we don't have an issue. Plus, now we're gonna have one uniform coating underneath the car, not spots where it's old undercoating and paint and new undercoating and paint, and I don't know. I think since we're spending the time, or have spent so much time restoring this car so far, it's a good idea to just get rid of that old undercoating and start fresh. Obviously, it's more work, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not that much more than what we've already done. Now, if I knew I was going to be doing this, I would have done this a long time ago, especially before the stitch welding, because it would have made the stitch welding go so much quicker. Every time I had to stitch weld, I had to clean up the joint, and I took as minimum off as I could, just so that I wasn't going to have to go in and coat it later and save time at that point in scraping more off than I need. However, obviously when you weld, it heats up around the weld, all that sheet metal, which burns and hardens that undercoating, and I found spots where I thought I had scraped all of the bad undercoating off and found that I should have scraped more because there was not rust underneath it, but you could see everything was discolored underneath it because of the heat, so it wasn't really attached to the sheet metal anymore. And to be honest, going into this project, one, I wasn't planning on doing any of this stuff, but two, I didn't really appreciate how much time it would save to get the car dipped or sandblasted by somebody. But I mean, I don't know what it costs to get a car dipped so that it, to get rid of all of the rust and paint and undercoat and everything on the car, get it down to a clean, bare shell. It's got to be worth the amount of hours I have spent cleaning this thing, finding all the rust, start working on it and find there's even more rust than I started with. If I ever do anything like this again, which to be honest, I do not plan to ever, but if I do, I will definitely be setting aside money to get the car acid dipped just because of how much time and effort it would save in getting that done. And I showed you guys just how cold it was out here this morning, right? I think it was 38, something like that. This little wood stove is just cranking out here, even with no insulation in here. And I had ventilation running because of all the fumes coming off that. I had the bottom of the door cracked open over there, and I had a window fan up in the window blowing out. And you could definitely tell the cold air coming in. I could feel it quite a bit. Even with that, though, on this cold day, we've got it up to 70 out here. So that thing definitely cranks out some heat once you get it going, which I'm gonna need because you can't have it too cold out here when you paint. So we're gonna make sure when we get priming and undercoating the underside that we got it nice and warm out here, the car's nice and warm and everything. That way we got proper adhesion and curing of that primer and undercoating. And look just how much material we actually got off the car. Now, keep in mind, we had already gotten rid of a lot of it. Obviously, we replaced this panel and firewall here. That was all gone. We replaced both floor pans. So that got rid of a ton of undercoating that we didn't have to get off. But look at this pile. A ton that had to get scraped off. Now, like I mentioned, we need to coat the inside of everything on the car that we do not have access to now. Like the inside of our frame rails here that we've welded on. The inside of the front frame rails up here. This piece up here. Anything on the roof structure, everything in the back, basically everything that we do not have access to, we need to coat to protect it from rust. One, because it's 45 plus years old, don't know what it looks like in there, but also because we did a lot of welding on it, so any coating that was on the inside would have burnt off and we got no way to get to that. So like I mentioned, we're going to be using this Eastwood internal frame coating. You can get it in green or black. It really doesn't matter because it's going to be inside, and anything that seeps out you're going to coat in primer and paint anyway. So I grabbed the green. It comes with a tube with a 360 degree nozzle on it, so when you spray, basically you stick the tube all the way in the frame rail, spray and pull it out slowly. It sprays a 360 degree pattern to coat everything. You do 2 coats and it should be good. I've seen good reviews and everything about this, so we're going to try this. I haven't used it myself yet, so we're going to get right to it. All right, we're going to start off with what should be one of the easier ones to do. This front brace right here, the core support, radiator support. We got a nice hole right here to access it. So it should be pretty easy to stick that tube in now. I'm going to try and blow out any dust and crap that got in there from us working on this or just over the years, just to make sure. I'll do that for everyone before we start, but let's try this one out first. If you guys can see, it's all running out down here, which obviously that's going to happen. I think I went maybe a little too slower than I needed to. I think I'll speed it up next time because I got quite a bit dripping on the floor. And obviously, we don't want to waste it. So, yeah, just a learning process. I'll just go just a little bit faster next time. I think we'll still get good coverage. And probably what I'll do, since I got the car on its side and most of it's going to run this way or up here, it's going to all settle down in the bottom here, same thing down here. I think we'll do one coat with the car on this side, and then we'll flip the car over on its other side and do the second coat from that side, just so that better potential to get it even coverage. We're going to do this frame rail here. I got a nice access hole on the bottom side here. However, my hose isn't quite long enough to reach to the end, but I don't think that's going to be an issue because of how much that shoots out. You know, it shoots out forward quite a bit, so I don't think we got to worry about that. My frame rail's here. I do not have any way to get inside of it, so what we're going to do is drill a couple drain holes in each one. It's a good idea just in case you get some water in. They have them there for the factory, and I need it to get access to put that internal frame coating in. So we're going to drill one right about here, and that'll allow us to have access. All right, so it's pretty simple, right? Got all that stuff done up there, well, those four we just did. Need to get this here, this cross member here, or part of the frame. I'll probably have to drill some holes in this right here because we added this in. There's no way to access that. Same with right here, all the way up here. We'll get up here, and then I'll do some miscellaneous stuff. Like maybe I'll spray some in behind this pocket right here. That's where the seat belt mounts inside. It's 2 layers there. But we're just gonna do our best. I mean, anything that we do here is gonna be better than doing nothing. So let me zip through this and then we'll catch back up. And there we go, got that all done. That was actually pretty easy. As you can see, we got it dripping out pretty much everywhere, which is actually what you want. That means you know you got enough in there. However, I think I might have been a little excessive, even with speeding up. I think I put way in more than I needed to. You can see I got stuff everywhere. It was dripping out on the floor up here. You know, even in here, it was running in here from underneath. Which is fine, at least we know it's coated. However, I am gonna need to pick some more up. I got done everything underneath that needed to get done, but I got some more that I want to get done. Once the cars flip back over, we can do it then. Like I mentioned, I wanna get up inside the roof frame. I gotta get inside the rockers, which I didn't get, but you get inside those from inside the car. So we're good for what we need to be. I also wanna get like inside The quarter panels here, you know, that's all access from inside the car. So we'll get that later. Don't need to get it now. I'll probably pick up a few more cans. For reference, I went through 3 cans. Probably could have done it with 2, I would say, if I didn't quite get so much in there. But if you guys are doing this, pick up 3 cans just in case. Maybe more, depending on how much you want to do. So I want to take a peek inside one of these frame rails now that it's sat and dried and cured and everything. So I got my little endoscope here. It just plugs into your phone. Super cheap. I think it's like 25 bucks off Amazon. I'll throw a link in the description if you guys want one. But let's take a peek real quick and see how good it looks in there. All right, looking in there, it looks pretty green. Looks like we got pretty good coverage on most of the surfaces. I mean, it's definitely not perfect, I wouldn't say, but it's way better than it was beforehand. It's kind of hard to aim this thing, but yeah, we got a nice green coating on basically everything in there. So, is it 100% necessary to coat that interior? Probably not, but it's definitely better than where we were beforehand. So, moving forward, up next is priming and undercoating the car. We are finally at that stage that needs to be done. I have never run a spray gun before, so that's all going to be new to me. I've watched a bunch of videos. I'm going to have to do some refresher just to make sure I know how to set the gun up. But since this is under the car, you know, if we get some runs, if we get it on too thick, you know, it doesn't really matter. The primer is going to be covered up by the undercoating. The undercoating is rough by nature, and it's going to be underneath the car. But the most important thing is we'll have one uniform coating underneath the car at that point, and can move on, get the car off the rotisserie, and move on to more fun stuff. But before we do that, before we actually get to spraying, I need to clean all of this stuff up. Everything has to be cleaned up. So I'm going to need to use my cleanup disc like I mentioned previously, clean all this up. That's going to be very time intensive, just like scraping off this undercoating, because we need to get it, you know, essentially perfectly clean so that the primer has a good surface to adhere to. But we are very close to getting this thing back down on the ground, which I am ecstatic for. I cannot wait until, I mean, as awesome as having this rotisserie is, I'm sick of the car being on it and I want it back on the ground. But that'll about do it for this one. Thanks for watching. Come back next time. I'll see you later.